Our final FBS game on this show before we get into a very exciting matchup, in my opinion, maybe one of my favorite games of the year. But this one is before that. So we have number 5 Washington on the road at number 11 Oregon State. Kelly, I had to quadruple check this. The Beavers are favored. 2.5-point home favorites. This game carries an over-under of 63.5 points, and it kicks off at 7:30 p.m. Eastern on ABC. Now, Washington did open as a 2.5-point favorite, and the markets flipped that 5 full points in favor of Oregon State. This is a rain game, potentially. There is rain expected in Corvallis on Saturday, especially during the game. Keep an eye out on how much is coming in. It's going to be a washout. I don't see anything about wind so far, but, it's Wednesday. Things can change by the time the Saturday rolls around. Washington has won 10 of the last 11 meetings in this matchup, but of course, Oregon State is as good as they've ever been, potentially, maybe not hyperbole in the history of their team. Their only losses on the season is at Washington State, which is before the collapse, and also Pullman, very weird, difficult place to play, and then at Arizona, right in the middle of Arizona's big surge. So, but they've just a ridiculous ending to the schedule, getting Washington and Oregon back-to-back. That's going to be a couple of body blows there, where I'd love to hear your numbers about what their probability is to win both of those games. Probably very, very low if I had to guess. But Washington has been missing wide receiver Jalen McMillan, potential first-round NFL draft pick. They've been trying to work him back in. Luckily, he's far from the only option in Seattle. Rome Odunze, Jalen Polk are still one of the best duo pass catchers in the conference, in the country, really. I think Jalen Polk is one of the most underrated players in the entire country. I know the Apple Cup is a really big rivalry against Washington State, but I don't believe Washington is going to be looking ahead to that game, especially with this enormous matchup on hand. And I think the notion that coaches and players are unaware of the point spread is dissipating day by day. I think Washington knows that they're an underdog going into this game. At least they should. I've also seen a lot of discourse about Washington, they're frauds going around on the Twitter machine. I don't really understand it, to be honest. Washington continues to get by the thinnest of margins, yes, but they they're losing the turnover battle, and they're winning on the year, and in their past 3 games, they're winning in spite of it. They're plus 2.2 yards per play on the season, so they're not being outgained every game. Now, they were outgained by Oregon, Arizona State, and Stanford, but they bounced back, and they've outgained USC and Utah. So it's not complete fluky results. And I know we like to look at, well, did they win despite being outgained? A lot of talk about the Steelers right now in the NFL being outgained severely on the season, but they're still winning. That's not really the case with Washington. They got outgained in a couple of games that they won, but not all of them. They actually should have beaten Utah by multiple scores. So my question is, what would the line be if, Washington holds on to the football into the end zone for a pick 6 rather than discarding it behind them? Where would this line be if they beat Utah by 14 or by 10? I don't know that they wouldn't be favored. So the biggest mismatch here in the game, though, I do have to say Damian Martinez and the Beavers' run game against Washington's run defense. They've really struggled. The Huskies are 127th in rushing success rate allowed, but it has come against a really tough slate of opponents. Of course, that doesn't get any easier this week. Oregon State has taken the run game out of the equation against teams like Stanford, Colorado, Arizona, but they did allow 284 on the ground to UCLA and 240 to Cal, the better rushing teams that they've faced. So the opportunity is there for Dylan Johnson, if not looking at just the season-long advanced metrics. I still think there's an opportunity for Dylan Johnson to get going, and when he gets going, the offense really opens up.
Yeah, Brett, I'll answer your question first. Only an 8% chance that Oregon State, by my numbers, finishes the year 2-0 here. You talked about the end of their schedule. They haven't played a team yet power rated in the top 20. It's been a relatively easy schedule for Oregon State. It's why some people, including myself, made them a sleeper pick out in the Pac-12. But especially on the offensive side, the most difficult offenses they've faced to this point, Arizona at number 21, Colorado at number 42. Now you got Washington, who's number 4, and next week you go to Oregon, who I have as the number 1 offense in the entire country. So it gets real for Oregon State to end the year.
Little step up.
In some high-profile games, I'm very excited for it. This game in particular, it's got a watchability score of 9.3, making it the number 2 game of the week for me and a top 25 game of the entire regular season by this metric, which might surprise some people. Just if you'd said that, hey, this is top 25 game between Washington and Oregon State. So I'm excited for it. A top 5 CFP ranked team is an underdog. It's going to be a good game. I do believe Washington should be on high alert, but I'm not quite as confident as Vegas is in the Beavers here. I make this Washington -2. So again, I think the opening line was actually pretty darn good. It's a 56% win expectancy for the Huskies. Washington's having an outstanding season, obviously. They are my number 6 overachiever to date. I've had them in the top 4 of my most deserving rankings for 5 consecutive weeks now. But from a power rating standpoint, here's where I can understand some of that fraud talk. Not all the way to fraud, but my model isn't quite sold from a power rating standpoint. Their best power rating rank this season is number 8. I currently have Washington power rated number 13. So from a elite football team standpoint, at least by my metric, Washington doesn't check that box, but they have a very deserving resume. This reminds me a little bit of the TCU team last year. Now, this year's Washington team, I would say, is certainly better on the offensive side of the ball than last year's TCU. Not that they weren't good, but there's a little bit of similarities there from where this team's power rated versus where their resume is ranked. The Huskies are great on offense. They have been all year. They started the year number 7 in August. They rose to number 1 for 1 week in October. They've now settled in at number 4 for the past month. But the biggest question this year has been and continues to be just how good is the Washington defense. This is the unit that started the year number 50 in my preseason projections. They quickly moved into the top 25, but after 3 straight weeks of regression, this unit is now ranked number 43. That's only the 5th best in the conference. This will be a huge test for the Husky D this week against the number 11 Oregon State offense. In August, I pegged 2 teams as sleepers in the Pac-12. I touched on this earlier, mainly due to the relatively easy schedules. Oregon State and UCLA. UCLA has lost their way a bit here recently, but the model was pretty dialed in on Oregon State from the jump. The Beavers started the year number 24 in my power ratings. They've been between that and their current number 18 ranking all year. This defense has been exactly what I expected. They started the year number 26. They're now number 27, but it's the offense. It's been a pleasant surprise. Number 11, it's the best Oregon State's offense has been all year. It's the best that we've seen in Corvallis in a long time. But the secret's out on this game. As you said, Brett, the Beavers are the favorite in this one. I think I'd like their chances more if they were an underdog, because you said it. Washington knows that they're an underdog in this game. They know, hey, we're sitting outside the CFP's top 4. We got to continue to make statements. And so I expect that they'll do that. Washington is going to be an overwhelming favorite to still make the Pac-12 championship game, even if they lose this game. But like I said, this team's already on the outside looking in of the committee's top 4. Husky fans won't feel great about their chances to make the CFP if they drop this one in Corvallis. You have a big opportunity against what's likely going to be Oregon again at a neutral site this time. But man, if the committee's not impressed that Washington's undefeated at this point, I don't think that a Washington team that has 1 loss is going to impress anybody anymore. I mean, I don't know that they'll fall. I don't know how far, I guess, at this point. But bottom line, I have Washington -2. It's a 56% chance that Washington books their spot in Las Vegas right here, right now, and rolls into the final Apple Cup, at least for now, undefeated.
I do know the 2 teams have promised to keep the Apple Cup going. It has not been scheduled yet, but that is not truly a rivalry that we're completely losing here, at least. There is a potential for a skewed number here, I think, with a little bit of recency bias, and that being Oregon State just absolutely crushed Stanford. That was a no contest there. I said it was a potential for a Cancun team earlier in Houston. Well, Stanford is the Cancun team in the Pac-12. They have completely phoned in the rest of this season. Oregon State, they're an excellent team, having an excellent season, but they've been less dominant against that top-tier talent on their schedule. Like you said, their schedule's been fairly favorable. Utah's offense was a total disaster that didn't know what they wanted to do at quarterback when they played, and the Utes have since improved on that. UCLA's defense is atrocious, and of course they're sliding. I just see a lot of caveats in your favorite term, in their ranked wins, quote unquote. If there's ever a year to fade market movement too, this has been the one. It hasn't really been nails. So I will take Washington if it hits 3. I think they win this game outright. I know we've talked about 1-score games. They're 4-0 in 1-score games, so not exactly your favorite what-if team. But to be honest, the 1-score wins to me, that matters year over year. I don't know that in the middle of the season, all of a sudden, these 1-score games are going to be turning into losses. And again, we talk about the Utah game being a little bit misleading. So I also like the over here if we're talking the over-under, giving Washington's offensive potency and their inability to defend the run game. So over I like. Washington, if we get to 3, I think that the Huskies win this game outright.